Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
Welcome to the bonus show. Matt sent me a story about Lowe's introducing robotic employees. Now, this article did not have a picture of them. I looked them up. They are, I guess, kind of designed in a way so that they slightly resemble what you would call a humanoid robot, although it's like a big screen. Then there's a little neck and then the head. And the head is just like a rectangle. And that's where the scanner is. Now, what these things can do is they are intended to replace employees in helping serve customers in these stores, help them find things, match things, give suggestions, that type of thing. So they are 5 feet tall, 85 pounds, and they can direct you. They interpret language. They interpret multiple languages. You can ask them where to find something. They will tell you. They have little cameras and scanners. You can hold up something that you want to match or find something similar to, and I guess the robot will be able to tell you what that is accurately.
This is not that different from combining Siri with the screens that are already in a lot of retail stores mounted on the wall that you can like hold a barcode up to, right? I mean, that's basically what you're doing. Yeah,
pretty much. This takes it a little further. And Lowe's traditionally is a company that's pretty good to their employees, right? We've discussed that.
Yeah.
At least not, at least we've never discovered anything sinister or bad going on there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to mix up Costco and Lowe's because I know Costco's really the one, and sometimes I think people mix them up. So let's not go too far out on a limb saying Lowe's is just a fantastic employer, but I don't remember any particular stories that are egregious like Walmart, for example.
Right. I think they treat their employees reasonably well. But now it looks like they're starting to replace employees with robots. And I think it's interesting, of course, to have these robots. And I think it, from a business standpoint, makes sense. But should employees be worried?
Yeah, here's the thing. I recently saw a video about this, and this applies. I have a friend who does not use the self-checkout lanes at supermarkets because he believes that it is going to further or speed up the elimination of cashier jobs. This reminds me of when we had cars starting and people were saying, listen, we need to stop this because all of these horses and the horse and buggy drivers are going to be out of work. Looking back now, does anyone think that it would have been really possible to stop replacing horses with cars? Of course not. You might have been able to delay it slightly by government edict, but this was a change that was happening. So I think that the conversations now about trying to push back against automatization in order to prevent jobs from being lost is absolutely the wrong conversation. Those who are going to do best are those who strategize around optimizing. Now that humans aren't needed for these types of jobs, what's the most productive thing for society to refocus all of those labor hours into? I think it is a non-starter to think about not advancing these technologies in order to keep jobs, because at every instance in history, that just hasn't worked, okay? It just hasn't worked, and those who have focused on the delaying, on the conserving, which is where conservative comes from, have not been prepared when that change ultimately comes. So I think that, of course, jobs are going to be lost as technology advances, as things become automated. Think about self-driving cars. Not only, forget about people driving themselves. The transportation industry is huge. Think about delivery drivers, taxi drivers, airport shuttles, all sorts of these transportation jobs. A lot of those jobs are going to be lost. There's no question about it. And to me, the focus isn't on how to prevent technology from advancing to keep those jobs. It's about how to refocus as a society so that those people will be further productive in new areas.
Now, to attack the story from a different angle, if you walk into a Lowe's and you see one of these robots and you have an ultra-specific question or something that you need matched, are you... let's say you also see an employee standing just a few feet away. Which one would you go to first?
Oh, of course I'm going to the employee. I don't want to talk to a robot.
And if you did not see an employee close by, you only saw the robot, would you spend the extra time to seek out an employee, assuming that the computer might take you a little longer, or would
No.
you, just for the sake of trying it, would you attempt to use the robot?
Of course, I'm very curious about how good this robot is. Like with Siri, I was curious. I don't have an iPhone, but I've messed around with people's phones who have Siri. And just to see what the technology is like, it's not something that I would find that useful right now. It would be easier to me to just make the entry in my calendar as opposed to telling Siri to make the entry in my calendar. That's how I feel right now. But of course, I would want to test this robot and see where the technology is.
Yeah, there's like this novelty component of these robots as they're introduced, I think, and people will think, oh, this is fun. Oh, this is cool. I want to check this out. Eventually, of course, when they're fully integrated and ubiquitous, we won't even think about that. But I think for a while, who knows? Maybe it will even attract new customers to the store just to check it out, as opposed to Home Depot or something.
Yeah.
Here's a study that Dave sent me, actually, that is a study that shows that people's perception of a story or an opinion, of the intelligence of the person who wrote that story or is stating that opinion, people think that they are more intelligent if that person is being mean. That's a nice way to sum it up, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what's going on here. So there was a study done that by this what was she, a teacher in the Harvard Business School. Anyway, she took two articles, excerpts, I don't know, some type of opinion column or something, and changed one of them to make it look more negative. And essentially, the group of 55 students that were given these two reviews, almost all of them agreed that the more negative review was done by a smarter person and that they made better points somehow. This, I don't know how I feel about this. I mean, I'm not denying that it's true, but why is it that people feel this way?
I don't know. The study doesn't translate necessarily into, so this is based on how an article read. One article was much more negative and mean and critical. Even though the opinions were similar, people thought that the writer of the mean article was smarter. I don't know that this always applies in interpersonal conversations, right? If you were to talk to two different mechanics, both of whom have the same opinion about what's wrong with your car, but one of them is really mean and condescending to you and explaining to it, and the other one isn't, will you come away thinking that the mean and condescending mechanic was smarter? I don't really know. And I understand that there are a lot of underlying things here. The idea of the kind of bad boy in terms of relationships with women. You hear that meme thrown around at all. Girls like the mean guy. There's a lot of different ways in which this is actually kind of discussed within society. But while it applied in this study with written opinion, I don't know that it would be the same way in terms of interpersonal contact.
Yeah, I'm not sure. There's one suggestion here that is perhaps it's evolutionary, and that in the ancestral environment, focusing on bad news helped you survive. But I don't know. So it's an interesting study.
I mean, Lewis, when you talk to people, if they're kind of pricks, do you think that they're smarter by definition?
I've never even considered it. You know, I just don't even. You don't even think about that when you're talking with someone. You probably will just walk away saying like they were a real ass, or you know, they were really obnoxious.
But you're not sure how it affects your understanding of their intelligence.
Right. I've never reflected on that. I'd like to think that I would base that solely on the arguments they made and what they said, not necessarily how it's how it's presented. But I don't know. I can't say for sure. I guess I'll pay closer attention to that moving forward. But after reading this, maybe I will, maybe I was affected by it before, but now will be aware of it and won't be as affected by it, by something negative. I don't know. All right, let's move on. An interesting poll here that was a poll by the Russian people on the Cold War and the Berlin Wall. And the poll, well, it says that a third of Russians think that the Cold War did not end with the fall of the Berlin Wall. And, I guess that the end of the Cold War in some ways can be open to interpretation.
Of course it can.
Fair?
I mean, the beginning of it can, and that type of war did not necessarily have a set start and rarely has a set start date and end date, okay, so to speak. And obviously the fall of the Berlin Wall was a huge move towards the end of the Cold War, but that is not the type of resolution that is like a military ceasefire or surrender. It's a very different thing. So yeah, I would agree that it's not unanimous that it ended with the fall of the Berlin Wall, but some of the respondents believe that it went on much, much, much longer in a way that is not really supported by data. Yeah. And that, I think, we have to distinguish here by saying, well, we can't definitively say it ended on that day versus it went on for 15 years after that.
Now, that was the headline of this article, and that's just one part of the poll. That's not the one I want to focus on the most because I don't think, like we just said, that one is kind of open to interpretation. This poll was conducted by the Public Opinion Foundation. 82% of Russians were aware of the tearing down of the Berlin Wall. 13% of the Russians polled knew nothing about it.
Now, that is not so surprising because remember, this is not in their country, first of all. And I understand that the divided Germany was such a big thing in Russia that you would think, of course, everybody knows about that. But Russia is huge and it has a lot of very, very rural populations that have almost no connection whatsoever with the news world. Now, whether those populations were reached for the survey would, of course, be a legitimate question. Maybe they weren't. But hearing that 13% of Russians hadn't heard of it, to me, would not really be that surprising.
Right. So it probably would not be surprising if I said that 51% of those interviewed said that the destruction of the wall was a good thing, while 13% said it was bad. 37% remained undecided about their attitude to the unification of Germany.
Yeah, I guess that those numbers are not wholly surprising to me.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. In a similar poll conducted in 2008, right after the Russia-Georgia military conflict, about 52% of Russians said that, in their view, the Cold War was going on, and only 18% answered that it had stopped. Yeah, I'm curious to know where exactly they're sampling all of these people from.
Yeah.
But strange stuff going on in Russia. If I had to guess, I would say that in some ways, Russia is probably worse than the United States when it comes to certain areas having far more ignorant people.
And by ignorant, you're not saying stupid. You're just saying ignorant to facts.
Right. Not aware of what's happening. I mean,
it is a far
people
bigger
living in way up in the northern parts of Siberia. How in tune are they with what's happening in the rest of the world, let alone their own country?
Yeah,
right?
It depends on the areas. I've seen a lot of documentaries on Russia, and Russia is a bigger country than the United States, and there are parts of Russia, bigger parts of Russia, that are much more disconnected than rural parts of the United States. So in the U.S., we have tons of people who are unaware of so many things. It wouldn't be surprising at all that in a country that's even bigger and has even more remote areas, you would experience more of it.
Mm-hmm. And I guess the idea of this poll and why it happened now was that we just reached the 25th anniversary of the fall of the wall. And Gorbachev is going to give some type of speech. Maybe he already did. But yeah, interesting stuff. Russians. I still say that I will probably never travel to Russia just on principle, unless they turn things around over there.
I still am really interested in seeing much of Russia, but I do hesitate right now because of the political climate. But of course, it's like by not going, it's not the government necessarily that you're not supporting. it's mostly small business owners, but at the same time, I go back and forth on this.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. I mean, of course, there are things there I'd like to see. Just not a priority. All right, that's it.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.